I have noticed guiding guys with PRCs, they tend to have more cycling issues. Totally could be anecdotal, but they can't creep a bolt shut on them.
Yeah, made them fatter. We've made them shorter with shorter shoulders and then longer bullets. It's a nightmare for when it comes to like angles and magazines and things like that. If you want something to feed like perfectly every time, just get a 30-06.
Very happy to have Jared Smethurst on the podcast today. So Jared works for Beretta. My interest is a subset of that, more specifically Sako and Tikka. And I'm pronouncing Sako right. Is that right, Jared?
Yeah, they say, Sako makes rifles, Seiko makes watches. So that's good.
Okay. That's a good way to remember it, actually, man, because I always revert back to saying Seiko. So now that you've said that, I'll say that. So anyways, that's what I'd love to discuss more with you about. And welcome to the podcast, Jared. I do want to say right off the bat that me and you are acquaintances and friends, but I don't have a financial relationship with Beretta or Tikka or anything like that. Really, the purpose of having you on is to get some of my questions answered about, in general, why so much of us in the hunting crowd are obsessed with Tikkas. But anyways, welcome, Jared.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Appreciate
of
it.
course, man. So I'll start with a little story that happened recently. So this was like 3 or 4 days ago. I was shooting with a bunch of the guys from Rockslide and a couple of instructors that a lot of those guys shoot with. And one of the things we do in the snow is we test these actions, and we just throw some snow in the open action. And I'm talking like a dusting, Jared. It's kind of, I think this gets lost when people see these. They think it's like it's like an abusive test. I mean, I'm talking like kick snow into the action. And I don't know what it is, Jared, and I want to hear your explanation, but in general, the Tikkas have no problem. Like, you can just crank around out of the magazine, goes right in, the lugs lock, shoot it, extract, right? Almost all the other actions, you either can't get it closed. Yeah, I mean, if you do decide to beat it closed on the ice or whatever, then you have an extraction problem, and then you have a rifle that potentially can't be used until you solve that issue. So, do you know what's the simple explanation, man?
I think probably the simplest explanation would be that they're like how they design things and how they build these guns. So they're in Finland, um, so they have like a long history. I mean, they're a huge hunting culture out there, and
Sure.
I mean the place is basically like probably the closest thing to like Alaska here. So I think they just don't have any time for something that wouldn't function in snow in extreme
Right.
weather. So like I think that's probably the base of it, but that's something that I think over the course of starting from like Mauser 98s to now, something that we've almost lost. It's like these bolt guns were meant to run in the trenches of World War One, and now it's like they're range toys that are kind of pets. So I feel like that's something that Tikka Sako really hasn't lost. Like they're really into making sure things function 100%, making sure that's like the top priority of how they run, how they work, and they build that into the action of hey, we want tolerance here to be able to move snow around. We also want it really tight for accuracy in other places. So um, I think it's just the nature of the design and what they prioritize when they design rifles would be the easiest way to explain it.
And just so I understand, if you can fill me in on this, Jared, like what is the trade-off? So I understand the basic idea when I look at an action and look at the bolt of a rifle, and then the locking mechanism of the lugs. Like, I understand the basics of it, but what's the actual trade-off that a manufacturer is doing versus, like, because for sure, when I run a Tikka bolt, it's loose. Like, I would describe it as, like, everybody describes a Tikka action is smooth, but I would almost describe it as, yeah, it's smooth, but it's like rattly relative to other actions. So how
Gotcha.
can you get that? How can you get that in a Tikka and then still have them be accurate? Like like can you break down the actual mechanics of that?
Yeah. So I've got a rifle right here. I'll bring in the line. So,
Sure.
and I think what you're referring to is like how much play there is in like this movement, which isn't
Yeah.
a little bit, which isn't a lot, but it's some. Um, so like that really, like this amount of movement just allows for, I mean, that's you're basically you're moving something to the very end of its travel and now it's unsupported, so it's actually not even that like it's that generous of a amount of movement, but you know what the biggest concern is, what does it do when it's fully locked up? So how much movement does it have there? So even if you take like a Mauser 98 and a lot of those actions, you'll get at this much or much more play out of there. So and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But there definitely are actions where, like, say, if they're, wire EDM and things like that, that they're like, they really want like perfect tolerance, you might be sacrificing just the ability to like say, if you do have sand, you do have something that will actually bind and cause some issue there. So yeah, out here, you're not like, by having this be able to move that much, you're not causing any accuracy issue. It's basically how does it, how much movement and lockup do you have? So like right now I'm pushing, with my thumb and finger. And then also when you're firing, because currently right now you actually have the cocking piece. You have the trigger is engaging that and holding that back. So when you fire, it's basically loosening all of that, and just see how little it moves under once you pull the trigger. So that's really you can have accuracy and you can have reliability. It just takes a lot of engineering to get there, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
between
a
the two.
you know
While you're talking about that, Jared, I'll grab a gun here too. And of course, this is unloaded and stuff I checked before the podcast. So when you say that, so this kind of action, it now, I hope I haven't said this incorrectly publicly, but one thing I noticed, like particularly with new hunters, also, Jared, is Tikka people tend to struggle less with Tikkas because you can put perpendicular pressure on the action.
mhm.
Does that is that is and just tell me if that's just like, oh well, that just happens to be the case. But is that functionally part of the reason there's that play too?
Yeah, I would. So that's also too has to play into a lot of like the rigidity of the action. So the action is, and you'll find this out if you ever bed like a ton of rifles or you're taking things out of stocks and putting back in a lot of times, like say like you've got a thick piece of metal on this side of the receiver on most actions and a much thinner one on that side. A lot of times you'll get those in stocks. You'll torque it down, and then all of a sudden you realize your bolt doesn't actually move as well as it did outside of the stock.
Oh, okay.
So a
It,
lot of that binding is basically caused by, um, you know, even a slight bending or things just being slightly out of tolerance. So yeah, it is. It is. I mean, these things are so straight, and they're they designed them extremely. The ejection port, right, is not like massively oversized, things like that. So it's a very rigid action. So it's really plays to the strength of it's really hard to bind up.
okay. So I got you. So part of the reason that is that you don't get like any sort of binding on here. So if you put perpendicular pressure, there's still that whatever spec there is. Because I could put a shitload of pressure like to the side, and I can still run the bolt. You know what I mean? But you're saying that's just because the space that's built in there stays there because you don't get any like warping of the action.
Yeah, yeah. There's like no warping or things like that, and that's like say, oh, I don't necessarily want to talk bad about other companies, but they're like say a Remington 700 or things like that,
Yeah.
where it's like you will those are hardened after they're all the machining's done, and so you will see like, and that's why blueprinting is such a thing on like stock Remington 700s. If you want like a custom rifle built off of one, a lot of people will say, well, I want a blueprinted action, and that's like you're squaring up the raceways, you're squaring up basically every piece of that, and you want a perfectly square and a square action that's and that helps with binding as well and things like that too. So just making sure you're like the stock isn't squeezing that action or pulling it down essentially. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
No, no, that makes all that makes. I know this is like very basic to you, Jared, but to me, it's like those little explanations are, and I'm not like the most in-depth nitty-gritty gun guy, so it helps me understand things. So I appreciate that. Um, how about the like? Is there a difference in the bolt face or the chamber in there in terms of why? I mean, I had a specific instance with a Remington 700 clone that I shouldn't say a specific instance. Like I've had this over and over. I can't get them to shut on snow. Is there a difference? Is there a difference in like the actual chamber or any of the mechanism in there that you know of?
you do have like so if you look at like the nose cone of that guy, the lugs are you can see it like they're tapered. So what you might be having is you might have the ability for that to push like have snow push away from there,
Or like
but
it squeaks out, like
yeah,
squishes out.
yeah, and that's kind of like people say that too about like the fluting and things like that. Um, I'm a little indifferent on the on bolt fluting. I'm always like kind of a purist. I don't mind it, but it's not something I would necessarily pay extra for. But yeah,
Jared,
I
what
would
do
assume
you
it's there.
mind? Do you mind explaining what the fluting? Do you think there's, in your opinion, do you feel like there's a downside to fluting?
So if you take, I mean, not necessarily like a there can be downsides. I would put it that way. Um, the upside is like second kind of cool. Like it looks pretty
Sure.
badass
Yeah,
to
yeah,
have
yeah.
fluting, and it is like it is lighter weight. So you're like cutting material away from something that doesn't necessarily need all of that strength or rigidity. Um, but one thing like, and it's not on like every rifle. And actually the Tikkas are really good about this. Like you can. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing sideways on this
Yeah.
and you as you're opening and closing, um, some companies get super aggressive with their fluting, and they actually rely on the bolt body itself as you're opening and closing, and you can basically hear almost like a zipper, like you can hear it going over each flute back and forth. And so that's where I'm like, no, it's gone too far. So,
Yeah, I got you.
but yeah, this is um, you know uh, some people would say too, like if you're throwing snow in there, you're cycling that it can somewhere to go essentially and things like that too. So it probably does serve. It's more than just um, for looks, but yeah, it is one of those where it is it's it's mostly for looks.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, yeah, no, and that's all good. Um, are there any other things on the action front that make Tika's unique that we haven't touched on, Jared?
Yeah, you know what? It's kind of interesting. So you go like when it comes to like rifle manufacturing, right? So you have like historically really good designs and they can be executed poorly, right? And say like say for the bolt, for instance, um, you know, 100 years ago, they're making Mauser bolts, and they're making them out of one piece forgings. So they would take a giant hunk of steel, it's like a giant L shape, and there's still companies that do this. Like say like a Weatherby Mark V, or there's others, but they'll machine the entire bolt from one giant hunk of steel. Um, that's really it's not a it's it's harder to do it that way. It's a more expensive product, and it's harder to get like straight. I mean, like relatively, you can't just chuck. You just can't chuck it up in like a lathe, right, and turn it as
Yeah.
easily. So, but it's really expensive to do a bolt like that. So you look at like the last 100 years are how do you take like say a Mauser 98, how do you make it cheaper and then and then also make it more accurate. So if you take a straight Mauser 98 back in the day, and it's not like they're going to be phenomenal shooters. They're not going to be one MOA guns. Um, So like a Tikka, for instance, and it's you can kind of see it right there. So this is made from two pieces, but it is a so like the body of this of the bolt can be extremely. I mean, it's easy to manufacture. It can be extremely straight, and then also that it's super functional. Just having a giant dovetail where the handle goes into that, as opposed to like say other designs where it's like you're brazing on a bolt handle or things like that. So on here, you're kind of adding to the you're making it easier to manufacture. Um, you and you're also you're making it easier for on yourself to like make it perfectly straight. So
Ah, okay, I got you. Yeah, yeah. So somebody could view it as like a cost savings thing, but it also makes it so you can hit perfection better.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it's easier to make straight if it's two pieces. The like the which kind of set the benchmark. I think the Remington 721 came out before the 700, which had also a braced on bolt handle. But I mean, that was what companies like Winchester were going up against, of saying like, man, there's guys who are making cheaper rifles, they shoot just as well, but you know, how do we win in that fight? So yeah, part of it like is things like this. They kind of did the same thing with the action, which the so basically all actions are going to have a some type of device to take the recoil and transfer that to the stock, right? So the action is moving under recoil, and it's basically you have screws that are holding it torque to the stock. And like in this case on a Tikka, you have basically a groove cut in there, and so it's a negative space for a. Actually, I could pop that.
Yeah, I've got one of your I got one of these
Oh, do
stocks
you?
that I took
Perfect.
off. We're talking about this, right?
Yeah. Yep. So
The proper term is it what do you guys call a recoil lug?
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
that's just your action lug is that's what's taking the recoil. That's what's locking the action itself into the stock. So like say if you take a Winchester 70 or something that has a machined in recoil lug, you're having to start with a much larger piece of metal and then machining that down, and you're only leaving that one piece that's extruding. That's um, basically, so you have a lot of machining steps in between to get to there. If you like a Tikka, and that's actually more common now on a lot of rifles, but having that like a negative interface where you can cut, that takes a lot of the brunt. Makes it easier to manufacture for one, right? You don't have to use such a large bar stock,
Right.
and also it's very precise to do it that way. So I think you're familiar with like on a lot of Remington 700s and clones, Bergaras. I mean, most Remington 700 clones are going to have like this piece that you'll see sandwiched between the barrel and the receiver,
Yeah.
and that will be the recoil lug, which is a fine way to do it. The only reason that like I wouldn't say it's like the best way is because you're adding another stacking tolerance between your barrel and your action. So you have your the face of the barrel, the face of the action, though they're getting screwed together, and you put more piece in between there. And it can be done like really precisely, but it's nice to just eliminate it. So
Yeah,
uh,
I got you. So just so I kind of I'm following the theme here. So it seems to be the kind of the theme with how Tika's done stuff is it's like they've changed the manufacturing process to make it so it's simpler to get to perfection. That is that kind of the
yeah,
idea. And so okay, so this interesting because like I was in my mind I thought you were gonna give me like a very nitty gritty of like this is the exact reason why it works better. This is why it's fairly accurate for the price point or whatever. But it's actually like kind of everything added up, and it has to do
yeah.
with this process. I gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, it is a little bit of everything, and you can go too far down the role of it's it's easier to make something um, you know perfectly round, right, or perfectly flat. So a lot of the surfaces and things like that are kind of built like that. But yeah, I would say, I mean, from a company standpoint, um, really when you see the accuracy and you see things like that, like specific about the action. I think I visited their factory in October, and um, like man, like every single thing is QC'd, and everything is like really run down on that front. So it's cool to see like they just absolutely will not tolerate anything that's out of spec, or and so they have very high standard essentially too. So
Yeah, this may be a hard question for you to answer, Jared, but what's the culture like in the sense that do they view it as an economical rifle like we view it? Like when I look at it, when I look at Tikkas in the US in the hunting world, and this is like we could get into this more because I think it's like one of those exceptions where it's like you don't necessarily get what you pay for in some cases because to me like a Tikka from its price point kind of out his for the last 15 years kind of outclassed the other ones in its price point, but
yeah.
it's still viewed culturally as an economic right hunting rifle in the US. Does Tikka in Finland do they view it that way, or is it like where is it at on their spectrum? Is it I don't that may be an unfair question, but is there a difference there? I guess is what I'm saying.
They would probably view it as like an everyman's rifle, like right, like this is it is attainable, and yet it is basically all you need.
Yeah,
So that's one of the I feel like going over there talking with them, and like they really like this is the go-to rifle. And if you want something a little finer, step up to a Sako. Um, but yeah, that's probably I mean, it definitely is viewed as um, you can go too far down the budget trail, and then you
right,
find yourself in like you're starting to give up a lot of things. So this is like the I don't know. In my mind, this is the best bang for your buck. You're not giving up a ton. You're basically you're getting something as accurate as most really expensive custom guns anyway. So
right.
um, yeah, your best return on your money for sure. But
Let's
yeah,
if you don't mind, Jared, let's talk about Sako, and we can still kind of keep talking about Tika. So just reflecting on the one Sako I have. So, well, a couple questions here. So one, Tikas have also become, at least in the U.S., the rifle that everybody's like messing with, right? New stocks. Like, I mean, I imagine that like, I have no idea, maybe you do, but a big percentage of Tikas are purchased through, your distributors and retailers. And they're immediately, the barrel comes off, the stock comes off, and it's thrown into a pile, and people turn it, they customize it. Um, I think that's it's interesting from a business perspective because when it doesn't appear to me that you guys really care. Like, I'm not saying you don't care about it in a bad way. It's just not like part of your marketing, but the US market has taken it that way. Am I looking at that right? And do you guys have a perspective on that? Do you view it as a positive thing that people are doing a bunch of different things with them, or like what's the thought on that?
yeah, the aftermarket on it is huge, which is pretty cool to see, and a lot of that is I feel like with people kind of going beyond the Remington 700 platform and seeing what else is out there. It used to be that you would buy a 700 or like a similar rifle, and then the first thing you would do is you'd have to get it blueprinted and everything like that, right? You weren't able to just screw on a barrel and saying, hey, this is head spaced. But with a lot of I mean, the Tikkas are so square, the QC is so good on them. You don't necessarily have to like take it to a machine shop and instantly start um, you know, uh, squaring up the bolt face and things like that. So yeah, the aftermarket on it is like really helped the rifle along, and it's grown a ton. So it is kind of funny to see where people are buying complete rifles and then completely stripping it down to the action, and I'm like, man, it's it's kind of to me, it's almost like like if you like buy a new vehicle and you like pull off the tires, and I'm like, oh man, I would have like at least driven that until like they're
Yeah.
and then replace them. So that's kind of my view on it. But
No, no, no. Dude, I get that. I just have to laugh because like this stock, just me. I have like anybody who's trying to sell these stocks on eBay. Good luck, dude, because because I myself have like a dozen of them. But this takes me to the next thing, is the Sako. I would use it more than the Tikka for one reason alone, and you're gonna laugh at me, Jared. The safety, being able to hit this button and run the bolt, right? It
yeah,
is to me is hugely helpful. And it's anytime I go from a Tikka action to a Remington 700 action, um, that I don't have to manipulate the safety. I'm like, oh, this is taking out steps. So I love that about this rifle, and then I also like the pick rail that's just already on the action. But it kills me because I don't like your stock, and it's just like a personal preference thing.
yeah,
But the problem is because there's not more aftermarket, like I can just buy a stock and pop this into. I don't find that I shoot it as much.
yeah,
You know.
yeah.
I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, stocks are like, shoes. They're not
Sure.
all like one size fits all. So, but yeah, that's something. One thing on the Tika, right, where you have one action size and that is it, right? Um, on the Sako, you have like five different action sizes. So there, you have an action size for each cartridge family. And so, if you're a stock manufacturer and you're looking at like saying like, okay, well, we can buy, we could build one inlet for a Tika, or we can spend the time to spin up five for a Sako. It makes a lot of economic sense to just go with the Tika. But yeah, we're working on the
Right.
Sako side. So, but yeah, the bolt override and some of the features on the Sako are pretty awesome. So, and we do have other stocks. It's just one of those you're having to spend a little more money for for that. So the
Yeah, it's
functionality.
just a different. It's just a yeah, a different dynamic. And dude, let's
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about stocks a little bit because if you don't mind, like, so this I mean, I have shot a ton with just the factory Tikka stock, and just so you, I don't know if we've talked about it, Jared. Like my first hunting rifle was a Tikka, so now it's like I've had one for since like you don't know how long they've been around, but I imagine pretty close. Like maybe not been my first hunting rifle was actually a lever action BLR, Browning
oh,
BLR,
nice.
but
Yeah,
maybe when I was 15 or 16, I probably got my first Tikka. So it's been like 25 years or something like that. And so I've shot more out of this stock than any other aftermarket stock that I've put on them. Um, One, has it changed that much? And why have you guys stuck to this design? Guys, biltong, okay? I have been obsessed with this stuff for 3 or 4 years. Ever since I got on a keto, carnivore, paleo-esque type of diet, I've had a hard time finding healthy snacks. Biltong is a great option, particularly the slabs that have this fat on the side. That's where your energy is if you're a fat burner like me. Super simple ingredients in this, guys. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients. Pair that to your gas station jerky, a great snack in the backcountry or just day to day. Biltong Depot is a huge supporter of my content. Go to their website, biltongdepot.com. Use my code CliffGray, CLIFFGRAY at checkout for 10% off and to support this content. Thanks, guys. And I'm not, and I don't, and I'm not saying that like I dislike it or anything. I'm just curious why a lot of other folks have like changed and you guys haven't.
yeah. So I feel like if it's not broke, don't fix it, kind of a
Sure.
thing. So that's certainly been the culture around Tika, and also too, part of the let's see here, keeping it at that like price point of like, hey, there are going to be people who are going to take this stock and they're going to strip it off and replace it too, does factor in there a little bit. If you're now jumping up several $100s in cost to the end user, there they might go with something else that's cheaper to if they're going to just replace the stock. So that does like play into it, and also too like things like having like the grip that you can pop off and do a more vertical
Sure.
vertical grip on there does help. But yeah, no, it is something that's it has been around. It's been around for a while, and then even like the beaver tail. I don't know if you've seen the ones with the beaver tail, but that is this stock as well. You can actually order that as an accessory to get
Oh, okay.
a beaver tail on it. But yeah,
Yeah,
so
I'm not familiar with it. I'll have to go check it out. Is it a real, I mean, to me it's just like a real classic like hunting rifle stock. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why when I say that, I mean there's a lot of people that shit on Tikka stocks, right? Like, oh, I like everything about it but the stock. It's like, well, I mean, it's a design it's pretty close to design that's been around for a very long time, so it's um like what are you gonna say, right? It's the design that a lot of people are just expecting out of a hunting rifle. So I totally get that. Um,
yeah, I feel like too if you go too extreme in one direction or the other, you do like tend to you can like alienate part of the market by going too modern or so there is that where it's like kind of like a neutral classic kind of a thing. But yeah, it is interesting. The Ace rifles, which we launched, which are our chassis gun, and it's doing very well, and which has a lot of more modern Arca rail built into the front end, and do you have an Ace?
I don't have an ace.
Okay, yeah, they're pretty slick. I mean, for a chassis,
I've
they're
shot
quite
them.
nice.
I shot them with you the one time, so I'm familiar with them. Um, it's interesting. And I like them. Like, there's been this move, and I'm starting to see more and more guys in the hunting world shooting chassis. Jared. I don't I don't know that I'll ever be that guy, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I'm much more likely to shoot because I grew up shooting this, dude. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I don't wanna have my thumb on this side, and I don't, I wanna be able to put my thumb here and control the rifle. I don't. It in part. I mean, I'll admit that part of that is probably personal bias. Like I'm not gonna go there. I always want to shoot a hunting stock,
yeah,
but
yeah.
but go ahead.
Yeah, they have their place for sure. I feel like you have to do a lot to a chassis to make it make sense, like deep backcountry, like horseback stuff like that. Like folding definitely helps and things like that. But
Sure.
there's certainly they have a place. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's just everywhere. It's not like a chassis belong everywhere. It's like that. No, they've got a spot for sure. But yeah, no, I really like traditional stocks as well. So I
Yeah.
would rather take a traditionally shaped stock or even have it made out of carbon fiber and have like a really lightweight rifle. Like I find that easier to carry than a bulkier one that folds even or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I hear you. There is a part of me that I have. This is a wood. Oh, let me see. I got my sling stuck here. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but this is a wood rock stock, and I
Oh
like
yeah.
I do want to ask. You probably could never tell me if they've said anything, but I wonder what the guys in Finland think about this. This like they're are they think like, oh, that's innovative, or that looks like a good paddle for our canoes.
I I
Because
I,
it is
I
like
don't think I've
go ahead.
no, no, you go. I feel like it is like one of those where they'd be like, "Oh yeah, good stock." It looks like they turn this part upside down, though. Like it is almost looks like identical if you flipped it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So I've got a couple of those, and then I've got other rifles with more traditional, combs and tow lines and stuff like that. The problem, Jared, and I'm sure you guys deal with this, even for somebody, I shoot quite a bit. It's very hard for me to do like apples to apples comparison. You know what I mean? Like you literally have to have the same cartridge, the same action, the same everything. It's almost like you have to shoot it, pop it out of that stock, remember what that felt like, and put it into the other stock to really notice any relative difference. You know, um, like that stock. Now I've shot it enough there's no doubt in my mind that it does minimize muzzle flip. Like when I shoot
Mhm.
like larger cartridges, um, that relative to more like classic the style. But there's other things that have to get used to it. So I can see how there's a big challenge with people manufacturing stocks to your extent because it's personal preference. And then the question is like when people make these difference or make these big changes, can 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 the user like are they ever going to actually see those differences from their perspective,
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like part of the like that one looks extreme. Like the rock stock is extremely unique, so that like stands out.
Yeah,
Part of it is like how far do you want to make it different to stand out on a shelf, when you're trying to sell it and things like that. So, if it's only like, hey, we're just going to change these like subtle little things, it might not necessarily like stick out on a shelf. So I feel like it kind of like the market almost rewards like pretty outlandish, like different lines and things like that. So it's a fine balance whenever you're looking at it and saying, okay, this is certainly going to be we're going to go for uh, uh, we need something new, and it's
sure.
just necessarily putting something on there just because you're like, this needs to stick out. So yeah, it's in case of the Tikka stock, yeah, it's like super functional. It's it kind of has everything you need, nothing you don't, and it's been it's at this point it's kind of it's a legacy product for sure, but that has a long history. But yeah, it's um, there's a uh, quite a there's some things too that with stock design that don't necessarily like you look at one and you're like, okay, objectively this is lighter and this is going to kick more, and then you'll shoot it side by side and you'll be like, man, I feel like this lighter weight gun like kicked less. So there's all these like really small design features that really can like make a big difference. The negative comb where it's like moving away from your face actually, then and things like that. So yeah, it's there's a lot to it. So
Yeah, a lot of little nuances. And but we both know Ryan and the other folks that developed the rock stock, and it's funny like they try it is very like utility oriented. You know what I mean? Like what they're shooting for. It for sure has a unique look. Um and so far for me it's been like I said, like I shoot so many different rifles, it's hard for me to tell like giant differences. There's for sure the muzzle rise thing that is a real thing on it. But one thing that drives me crazy on it is you can't bore sight rifles because
yeah,
the comb's too high, and so there's little things.
I didn't even think of that on that stock. So but that makes sense. That
Yeah.
yeah. No, there's pluses and minuses. That was it's super hand. I love doing that. But just being able to pull your bolt. So can you clean from the action side? Put a cleaning rod down there because I haven't thought about that
Um,
either.
yeah, I don't, that so it's above, so it's like so this is above bore by like I think a half inch. So I don't know. Admittedly, dude, I've rarely cleaned my guns, Jared, if I'm being
Yeah,
honest, man. So I don't know, but given that you have the same issue with bore sighting, and it's kind of funny actually because I didn't fully understand this bore sighting thing. I always use a light. Maybe I'm like a nerd, but I just put a light in the muzzle. And then recently, somebody was showing me how they bore sight, and then I tried it with this stock, and I was like, "Well, I can't do it with mine." You know what I mean? Because it's in the
yeah,
in the way. But no, you might have the same the cleaning deal might be the same issue.
gotcha. Yeah, no, it's
But
interesting.
yeah, no, it has a unique. But I think that high comb is what stops a lot of that muzzle rise. You know. Because you know, it's funny, Jared. Like, not to go off on that particular subject, but I don't notice it necessarily when I'm shooting it. I notice it when I go shoot a different stock, like how much
Mm.
the stock wants to try to get into my armpit. You know, but it's like those things you notice with rifles, right? You change to one, you start shooting it, you don't really notice anything new. You notice it when you go back. You know, and it's
Yeah.
like your brain, something about how our brain works, you know?
Yeah, and I mean too, like how you're shooting it too, because I mean like most like classic designs are like you're standing essentially, like that's like how they're designed to shoot. And I know the rock stock is right much more of like, hey, if you're prone, you're more you're down closer to the ground, right? Is that the thought process
Yeah,
there where it can get higher on that? You can get higher. Um, you're not just on the on the toe kind of a thing.
yeah. To be honest with you, Jared, I don't, I'm not the guy. I'd be speaking out of turn on that. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've shot it. I've shot it in a bunch of different positions. Now, I will say, having said that, I have noticed the biggest differences in prone. So, but I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if that was like by intention or what. But for me personally, I have noticed the biggest differences in prone. Um,
Yeah.
but no, stocks are it's like you can go down a giant rabbit hole, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Mm.
I did want to ask you on the because I noticed that your guys' marketing material and stuff. There seems to be a push for you guys on the Sako. What else is different on it, Jared, relative to the Tikka?
Yeah. So, there's there's quite a bit. For one, like on a Sako, you've got like integral Picatinny rail mounts, right? So
Yep.
that's a super nice feature. I don't know. Yeah, I guess you can kind of see. So just how low and sucked into that action is. That's kind of one of
Right.
the problems with a lot of traditional mounts. Uh, is the pick rail will be sitting so high, and with a traditional style stock, you're going to have a hard time finding the right rings kind of a thing to get that scope to sit where you want it. It used to be like, hey, get you want your scope as low to your barrel as you possibly can,
Right.
I actually still shoot that way. Like that's what I prefer because it's like it's more compact, it's easier to carry, there's more less things to snag and things like that. So and I shoot well doing that. But yeah, so that's like a benefit there. Um, and that's yeah. So I mean, so that's one. And then going through like when you're talking about the safety. So you basically there's like so you've got like a couple different types of safeties. This one is my favorite. So you've got two positions like the Tikka that will lock the bolt, right? But to unload it, you have to click it off safe. So like especially when I'm training like new shooters, younger shooters, it's always like, okay, it's time to unload. You have to click it off safe. Make sure you stay completely clear the trigger. So it just adds like more of a um, you know, more
An
of a
extra step. Like there's
yeah,
always an
extra
extra
step.
step to the protocol, kind of.
Yeah, and kind of a tense moment where you're like keep away from the trigger as as you're doing that. Having a uh, and then like say Remington 700s and all their clones, those triggers do not lock the bolt, so you can unload it unsafe, but you have to, you walk through brush and it, the bolt opens and you lose a round, kind of a thing, which
Right.
drives me nuts. So I really like having. I prefer to have a locking, a locking bolt in that position. Three positions will you'll be able to have like a middle position, and that's like, say like Mausers or Winchesters or things like that. Um, the only problem though is like say like a Hoa 1500 or things like that. If you think you click it off and you think you're like ready to fire and you pull the trigger, I've done this on an antelope where I'm like, oh, click off safety, go up, and you go to click and you're just like, nothing happens, dead trigger, and I'm like,
Sure.
oh goodness. hit it again and put it completely off safe. Um, yeah, the bolt override is kind of my favorite design. So you
Yeah,
essentially,
Jared, I'm gonna see if I can get this up on the video.
yeah,
So because a lot of times this will come up when I'm chatting with people, and they think it's the same as a three part safety. It's not.
mhm,
Correct. I'm correct in that, right? Like functionally, it's a different thing. So you have the same Tikka safety. So anybody watching the video can see that. But then you have another button where the safety's on. So just like any Tikka, like a Tikka, the bolt's not going to run. But if I push this little button here, the bolt will run, right? So I don't have to
yeah,
take it off safety. I just push this. So I mean, this is just out of curiosity, Jared. Is this button? Does it unlock the bolt? Is that what it does?
yeah. So there's on on the bolt itself. Uh, it does two things. So like on this guy, so you have a little hole here, and so you have a post that goes up into it, actually blocking it. So that's what's
Okay.
keeping it to lock. So that's basically all that button does. It's pushing down that post, and then and that's what. But it still has the safety engaged on these guys. So that's basically what's happening. So you're safe to unload, and it's only two positions, which is I think uh, that's like an important enough feature for me that I would buy one of these for my kids as opposed to like something else, just because I'm like it's super nice to be able to just like there's there's no accidental discharges. You click off safety and oops, boom, like did you have your finger on the trigger, or what happened there,
Sure.
but
I mean, and I this is please don't take this as like a diss on the Sako rifles, but that's like that's the only reason why I would change, Jared. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Because like
I get you.
the other stuff, like there's just not like big enough functional differences to matter to me. But that thing's a big deal because like I'm very process. I try to be very process oriented, and it's like I try to do it the same every time. It just helps my simple brain, and to not have every time I rack that bolt to have to work the safety, to instead just leave that there and be able to push that. I mean, dude, it's just it takes step out of the process, man. I think it's a
Yeah.
big deal. I just keep my fingers crossed that like on the next version of your Tikka, it's just gonna be on the Tikkas. Yeah, good luck, right?
It's a possibility. You never know. Yeah. Um, yeah. Another thing that kind of separates these guys is three locking lugs. So three locking lugs and dual ejectors. So the two ejectors kind of just they keep a really consistent throw out the side of the rifle, and it's redundancy, just making sure like that like it's going to get that round out, which is super nice. And then the three lugs actually um, so three lugs will have more surface area than if you just have two lugs. So a little bit stronger. And then you also have a slightly shallower a bolt lift. So when you're lifting on the bolt, you're you're actually doing like four different. I mean, you're doing several different things at once. So you're unlocking the lugs. So the lugs are turning out of the way of the lugs in the action, and they're moving into the raceways. You're also too. So whenever the last like 5 or 10% of the lift, or degrees of the lift, what's also happening there is like it's called primary extraction. Um, so primary extraction is you're camming this open, and you're moving this, you know, I don't know, however many inches, like inches that is. But what you're doing is you're taking the case of that cartridge, and you're pulling it out of the chamber, like say 70 or 80 thousandths, or maybe 50 thousandths. I mean, it depends on the action, but you're basically unstucking that cartridge from the chamber. After like say magnums that are firing 65,000 psi, and so they're expanding in that chamber, and brass is a little elastic, so it's going to shrink back a little bit, but it's not. It's still going to be pretty stuck. So that's one of the functions of opening that there. And then you have
So yeah, just so people understand exact. So you're saying that the first pull that kind of breaks the stickiness of the brass cartridge, that is not from pulling the bolt back. That's still
Mhm.
within the lift.
Yeah. So you can see like right here, it's basically sticking straight out of the gun. The locking lugs are basically almost all the way disengaged. And right there, the locking lugs are disengaged. And you can see that space on the bolt of the back, the
Yeah,
bolt sleeve, the space there. So that's starting now to pull that case backwards. And then as you move it back a little bit more, you can see that gap just grew another, that's 80, 70 thousandths or something like that, 80 thousandths. And so that's basically now that action there has unstuck that cartridge case. So, and that's really important. If you don't have that, you're instantly, and you'll actually find this sometimes. Some rifle designs have a very shallow, very a minimal primary extraction. And
yeah,
when you first pull the action back, you'll kind of notice it's kind of stuck and you get it loose and then it will eject. So that kind of just goes to like the, smoothness of Sako being able to like, cycle it quickly and it's
sure.
smooth is that piece there.
Yeah, that the first part of extraction is the physically hardest. So you want as much to the extent you can, you want that to be in the bolt lift, not on your
Mhm.
pullback. Am I
Yeah,
is that kind of a yeah, that makes sense. Um
yeah.
from your perspective, Jared, and I know we're talking about two rifles that are, you know, very durable and consistent regardless, but between the two, do you view like if you were going to be in shittier conditions, would you go with the Sako over a Tikka for these reasons, or is there enough difference there?
One of the like the biggest reasons that I like the Sako, like especially if you're like say if you're backcountry hunting, is so the magazine on a Tikka, you just pull the lever in it and it pops out, right?
Sure.
So on this guy on the Sakos, you depress the magazine, so it's kind of hard to see, but if you depress that down, then you hit that, you can take the magazine out. Um, Otherwise, that magazine's locked in there. It's not going anywhere. So if
Right.
like a branch, whatever else, just smacks the heck out of your lever, it's not going anywhere. You have to depress slightly and then pop it out, and it comes right out. So that's kind of like I've always hunted with like either hinge floor plates or like ADLs or things like that.
Sure.
So like but yeah, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to lose my magazine. So like having a magazine that's like super retained in there is pretty slick. And then also too, you have the ability on these ones um, to top load. So magazines and like magazine systems basically work like essentially like one of two ways. It's either you have the feed lips that are like say for instance, like here's a Tikka magazine. The feed lips are retaining the cartridge and they're fixed in place, and then those have to be fed down into the magazine and then pushed backwards, right?
Yep.
Um, on a double stack magazine, um, you can press directly down from the top, and it basically staggers. So it
I
staggers
gotcha.
down, all the way down. So on a Sako 90, it actually holds like 5 rounds in standard cartridges, and you're able to just top load and push down straight
Yeah.
down, which is super nice. Uh,
Well, and I guess another advantage of that is that you still like in your normal hunting cartridges, you have 4 rounds in the Sako magazine and it's flush.
yeah,
Yeah, whereas on the Tikka you got a bump of the magazine. Am I
yeah,
correct on that? Yeah.
yeah. You got a little bump there on the bottom, and it holds 3. So
Yeah, 3
it
amps. Yeah.
usually holds one or two less. But yeah, so it just you can fit more in a double stack, and it's flush and it retains, which is nice. So it's just kind of like an old school, cool, really kind of a cool feature that you see on the shelf, and you wouldn't necessarily, until you like pick it up and you understand it, you wouldn't necessarily know. So that's one of those kind of a cool things to. Um,
Yeah, I laughed. I laughed when you brought it up, Jared, because on this rifle, like you guys need to put a sticker on here or something, because you almost got a
it,
phone call.
yeah,
Because to me, it's not intuitive, because I'm so used to Tikkas. I mean, now it is. Not now I know like, oh, you push and it goes. But you will, if you don't know to push, you're not getting the thing out. You know.
no, no, I think we're working on stickers, so that's
Okay.
something that we need to do because yeah,
Your
it's one
customer
of those
service
where
people get that one.
we've had even just people, like at the shows, I'll go through and like as soon as they pick up rifles, you can do like a couple things when you pick up a rifle, and like one's like, if it's got a magazine, you can take the magazine out and you can cycle the bolt. So
Yeah.
they get to that part and they're always like, oh, it doesn't come out. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, just depress this. So yeah, we need like stickers and signs and something, because it's a feature. It's actually a cool thing, but people don't, and of course we're macho. We can't ask. So,
Yeah,
we
yeah. So we
try
just
to
view it
figure
as
it
like a
out.
negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of funny.
Um, on my, I got a couple more questions for you, man. I don't know if you can answer this one, but are you guys gonna come out with a six Creedmoor in the Tikka?
Um, I can say
You
that's
gonna plead the
something
fifth?
yeah, we're pleading the fifth there, but it might be something in the works. So we're might be working on we're always looking at new cartridges. It's just a matter of really what it comes down to is if you just came out with every single new cartridge that comes along, um, you would have just a massive SKU list.
Yeah,
So it is
inventory
one of those where
nightmare.
you've got to trim out ones that aren't doing as well, and looking at new ones. But yeah, we're always keeping our eye on cartridges that are up and coming, and taking some of the market. But yeah, it is also it's one layer more of complexity when it comes to like Sako and Tikka. As being a European country, they abide by CIP, which is kind of like the American SAMI, but just more
Okay.
strict and slower moving. So they have to have like CIP approval to work on a new cartridge, and that can take, I mean, years at some point. So
Ah,
uh,
okay.
yeah, so because I think there's like, people will ask us for cartridges, and I'm like, that's not even CIP approved. Like we can't even start to look at it really until that point. So, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I got you. Well, the whole cartridge thing from a manufacturer's perspective, from a hunter's perspective or a shooter's perspective, there's just so many new ones. What's going to be, what's the new cool one? What are the advantages, disadvantages, blah, blah, blah. But you guys actually have to figure out which ones are going to be popular with some longevity, which is like a more
yeah,
difficult, I mean, it's a kind of a difficult challenge, I imagine.
yeah. If you were trying to run a company that like say you just want to like, because you could launch new cartridges constantly, and bring on every single one that comes along, and you would get some of that like first initial, people would say, oh, this is available in this cartridge, I'm curious in that, I'll buy that. But man, when it comes to like longevity, and really saying like, let's have products that are sticking around here, and also not like sitting on massive amounts of inventory that you thought would move but doesn't. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's different levels there of trying to figure out when it comes to cartridges, because I mean it's just not a new, it can be decently simple where it's like you're figuring out chambering and things like that. But like some of, like for instance, like some of the PRCs require like, depending on what magazine or things they're using, they might require a whole new, bottom metal, and angles to your feed lips and things like that. So it's not some of them aren't as easier to bring on as others. So it always requires, quite a bit of engineering.
All right, guys, in some of my content, you're gonna see that I've been using this chest holster from Invader Concepts. This is with my 10 millimeter. I also use it with my Glock 19 and even a PMR 30. I'm gonna do a bunch of content here in the next couple months on that around bear defense. It should be interesting. It looks a little awkward to have your gun under your bino harness, but if you test out all the different variations, it is the best and you have it on you all the time. I do have a discount code. It's CliffG and it's for 10% off. Go check them out. Man, it's funny you say that, Jared, and it's my observations are totally anecdotal. I have a 7 PRC and a 6.5 PRC myself, and I haven't noticed a big difference with those. Maybe part of that's because a couple of those rifles are Tikkas, but I have noticed guiding guys with PRCs that they tend to have more cycling issues. And the other thing, this sounds like a weird, again, totally could be anecdotal, but they can't creep a bolt shut on them. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
go ahead.
100%. Yeah, so that is, and that's kind of like by the design of, like the direction we've gone for like saying, hey, this is the most efficient and most accurate cartridge. What we've done is we've made them fatter, we've made them shorter with shorter shoulders and then longer bullets. So it's a nightmare for when it comes to like angles and magazines and things like that, where it's not just a easy, if you want something to feed like perfectly every time, just get a 30-06.
Yeah.
Like we'll have very few problems with that. It's going to feed. I mean, if it's in a Tikka, it's going to feed because they won't like release anything that's even remotely
Yeah.
90. Like it's
It's
good
got
to
to
go.
work. Yeah, yeah.
It's got to work. But yeah, like just from a like a physics standpoint, like the fatter, shorter cartridges with steeper shoulders are going to have a harder time. Like I think um, like say like the PRCs, I think like have like a 35-degree angle, and that's actually more of like a compromise than like a lot of the the Ackley improved and Wisms. I think we're like closer to 40. So and that's just super steep.
Even sharper.
Yeah, sharper, and just doesn't feed as well. So it's always, I mean, it's always interesting, talking, cartridges designs, and there's so much trade-offs where, it's one thing to look at a ballistics table and say, yep, this is it, this is the answer. And then the problem is like if that gun, if it only feeds under like certain circumstances, if you're running the bolt just a certain speed, it's like I would that's suboptimal.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. And then it's going to be out there, and guys are going to start putting, seeding bullets further out, like all this stuff. Like it starts to play into it. And it's just and I'm very, amateur on that side of things. But it like the PRCs, what I would say to people is like putting a magazine in a rifle and cycling the bolt hard and getting smooth, ejection of a bunch of cartridges real quick is not a good test. You if try to creep 2 or 3 of them in there and see if it'll work. Because I can't tell
yeah,
you how, like, you've got your rifle magazine loaded, chamber empty. It's how we walk around hunting. It's how I guide with guys, and it's like you try to creep one in. Oh, I've never had this action not work, and that's when it doesn't work, which is like the worst time for not to work. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
But it's interesting.
and also too with all these like being push feed actions, you retract the bolt and you try to pick up a new one and or and then you have a double feed. So yeah,
Yeah.
I bet you see all sorts of fun stuff guiding where you're like, um, you know, yeah, yeah, user induced malfunctions is a real thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's like one of those things that it may not occur any other time, because when are you gonna practice that? I mean, when are you gonna practice like a slow, cycle? So it's very interesting stuff. On that, dude, the last question I'll ask you, unless you got some other topics you want to cover, is I know that Beretta has a straight pull, but dude, why are straight pulls not more common in the US?
That's a good question. Yeah, the straight pulls that are out there right now, you've got the Blazer, you've got the Savage, and then the Beretta BRX1, is ours, and I actually like that one the most. but it's interesting. Part of it I feel like is just the direction America has gone, where it's like just as you know after World War One, right? Everyone like was using a bolt action rifle, and it just kind of stuck around where um,
It's just
where other
it's like a
things have
culture.
kind of
It's
come
like a
and gone.
cultural. It's like it's almost like a cultural thing. Even though, because I mean, what's the? It's a funny question for me to ask, right, Jared? Because when I look at them, when I've shot them, particularly like the Blazer, I've shot quite a bit. I've shot your guys' is very minimal. Um, I don't see a downside, but I still don't own one. So it's like, so even I'm irrational about it. You know what I mean? Is there a downside that people point out, or is that just it? Just it's just a cultural thing that we're not used to that as Americans, so we're just not going to shoot them.
I, I that's a good question. There's certainly a like a comfortability where it's like even like say like from gunsmiths, and they'll be like, oh, don't buy that, and
Ah,
you want
okay,
to buy this one, and it's like, well, why? And the real answer is because they've worked on this one 20 times and they haven't messed with that one yet, so they're not like sure about it. But
yeah,
yeah, it is. And maybe I feel like you could chalk it up to a couple different routes. One is if you want something that's super fast cycling, most people will just say, I need a semi-auto. So they'll, if, that's why we have the Second Amendment, we have ARs, we've got,
sure,
full size rifles, um, or battle rifles or whatever else. So if you want fastest, you're going to go semi-auto. If you want, say nostalgia or whatever, like a lot of people like lever guns. I mean, they're fun to run and
sure,
things like that. But on straight pulls, it's different. I mean, you go back and I mean, like I forget, it's like the K31 Swiss, like they've been around forever, and they all use like various different reasons, or ways to lock up. But yeah, like the Blazer is like kind of like a collet design, that like opens, spreads a little bit. So I mean, they're inherently they're slightly more complicated. They're always going to be more complicated because like on a bolt action, you're physically grabbing the bolt itself and you're lifting it up and you're moving it back. So um, on straight pulls, you need some type of mechanism that
that does that.
unlocks and then will allow open. So they usually, because of that, like unlocking, and that's moved from uh, man, this force to this force, it requires a longer throw. So
There's a
some
little downside there.
yeah, there's a little downside on that side, but they are faster for sure.
Oh
They're quick.
yeah,
We did a yeah the last range day at Shot Show. We just like we're like, here's a ranch rifle. There's like a 50-yard target. Like, see how fast you can run it. And it was pretty fun to see people just be like, wow, this is pretty quick. So
yeah, you can
yeah,
crank.
yeah. I think like it makes a lot of sense. Like hog hunting, predator hunting, like there's things where I'm like it would make more sense. But yeah, it's something that hasn't caught on as well as it probably should. So but yeah, they do pretty well in Europe, which is interesting. So a lot of driven hunts and things out there. So maybe it's hunting style too. So it's
Sure.
hard to say. I don't know if it's like one particular reason, but yeah, Americans love bolt guns. So
Yeah, yeah. They're fun to shoot. It is kind of funny. I know they're all safe. Like in the, in terms of statistically, they're all safe. There is something though in my mind that's like I like the simple idea of lugs when I go down locking, and then there's no way the bolt's gonna blow my face off. And not to say that any straight pull could or statistically would, but because it's a more complicated mechanism, it's like I just want to be the one to ensure that you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah,
But
no,
it
that's a real thing. So yeah,
yeah.
no,
No, for
make
sure.
yeah. I mean, when you like, I used to give tours and I would like talk about things and I'd be like, how much pressure is in a tire? And they're like, oh, 60 pounds. How much is in like a scuba tank? They're like, oh, 3,000. I'm like, well, how much is in like a chamber when you fire a gun, like, and have like a Magnum caliber or whatever, and they're like, I have no idea. I'm like 65,000 psi, and they're like that's a lot. I mean, and it's 3 inches from your face, so yeah, I think it's not necessarily like just a, straight pull versus bolt gun or things like that, but it's just like a quality thing where it's like, I really don't want to shoot like really sketchy old guns, or
Yeah.
things where you're like, yeah, I'm good,
Yeah, no, it's easy to take it for granted. The wild thing to me is we've been doing it for a long, long time. Like we've been doing that. I'm imagining we've been doing it like well before we could even measure pressure. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah, yeah.
so it's kind of wild.
The first, I mean, shoot, the first barrels that Beretta made were in 1526. Which is
That's
that's
nuts.
the first invoice they have, which is just crazy that they, goes back that far. But yeah, we've been putting gunpowder in tubes a long time. So
No, that's wild. You guys, what's the claim to fame? Is it the oldest? Is it the oldest industrial company?
um, I think it's the oldest industrial company. It's definitely the oldest rifle or gun company.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
it's certainly like in the, like, I think there's like a Japanese hotel or something that's older, but I don't think when it comes to manufacturing, I don't know of any that are older. There could be, but yeah, it's one of the oldest companies in the world, which is cool to see. It's yeah, yeah, 16 generations, which is pretty awesome.
No, no, it's wild. But I you got me tapped out on questions, man. I think you answered a lot of my questions on the Tika. Not in the way that I wanted the answers. I wanted the answers as like a mechanical, like this is why.
I
But I get it. It's go ahead.
I think, and I do have some answers that I think you might be interested in when we were talking about things like that. That I probably I could have answered
Sure.
different ways. Um, so especially too when you're talking about like on the accuracy side and stuff, I realize that I never talked about barrels, which is probably the biggest
Oh,
key
okay.
about accuracy. So that's probably something that I definitely I should have touched on. But yeah, so
Well,
like all
yeah, no, no, touch on it. I'm not gonna let you go
yeah,
without you. Yeah.
yeah, so all the barrels are made in house. Like all the barrels are made in house at Sako, and they're all hammer forged. So you go out there and it's like it's like a, oh man, imagine like a locomotive sized machine that's just pounding, CNC pounding on barrels is essentially what it's doing. And so
Yeah.
like a hammer forge, like cold hammer forged barrels, you basically have like a mandrel with like um, with the rifling cut into it. And then you take a hollow tube that's pretty fat, and it's got four hammers, and it's basically just hammering from four different sides, and that's how the barrels are made. So they have just like a really um, they have an excellent barrel that they're making, and it's super consistent. So that's probably the biggest when it comes to like consistent accuracy and just rifle to rifle. That's probably the biggest thing that plays into that would be the like when it comes to their barrel process, which is impeccable. So
In
uh,
the Sako and the Tika, are they the same barrels?
mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
the Sako TRGs, they have another step added to that. They also they do lead lapping, so they'll lap the barrels, which is basically you're smoothing out any imperfection, and you're making it like a super consistent. So they do that even prior to the hammer forging process. But um,
That's internal, like in the rifling. They're perfect. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so that's probably the biggest, when you compare other rifle manufacturers to Sako Tikka, that's probably the thing that stands out is one of the best. Um, most other barrel manufacturers, right? Like it falls into like three categories. On like the custom side, you'll see a lot of single point cut barrels. So that's like your Bartlands, your Kriegers, your proof research, um, and those are basically you have a tube, you have a cylinder that's drilled, and then you have a cutting implement, and it's cutting one pass at a time, and it's just taking a little bit at a time. And so to create one barrel is pretty time consuming. So that would be a single point cut barrel. How like probably 90% of the 90 yeah probably 90% of the barrels that are made in the US are button rifled barrels, and those are made by you have a blank that's bored through, and then you have a rod that is pulled through, and on the end of it is kind of like an egg shaped button with rifling that's cut into it. And so as it pulls through and it's being twisted, it basically expands out the barrel, and expands the rifling into that cylinder. So and there are some excellent button proofed or button rifled barrels that shoot incredibly well. And there's companies that that's all they do is button rifle barrels. Um, if I could choose one, like um, I would choose hammer forging. Like it's absolute. It's when done correctly. Any barrel can be done poorly, right? Um,
Sure.
but when it comes to consistency and things like that, yeah, I would take a Tikka barrel, Sako barrel. They're just going to be really consistent from uh, rifle to rifle. But yeah,
It,
that's
it it's funny, Jared, because I think it reflects on a couple things you said early in the conversation. Is given that explanation, it's got to make you cringe knowing that a lot of these barrels are pulled off,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
then the question is like, so there's this. Yeah, and again, like I don't want to shit on the other companies or be there's getting to specifics or whatever, but there's this idea that if I spend $1,000 on a new barrel, it's gonna for sure be better than the one that's on the rifle that I bought factory, right? There's this perception of value, and that's not necessarily always the case, you know. And then to your original point, like why not shoot the first barrel out and then and then try a different one, you know?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, a lot of and I would say like um, if you want absolute, like say you're building guns and you're piecing things together, and you're buying, from a really reputable barrel manufacturer, it's going to shoot well. Like it's going to
Mhm.
be a good barrel. I've probably dealt mostly with like Kriegers and things like that. But man, a lot of the other ones. I mean, I've got a proof on one of my main hunting rifles that shoots, really, really well. Um, but it's not to say that a button rifled barrel or a cold hammer forged barrels are going to shoot any worse than that. I've
Right.
seen phenomenal accuracy. I mean, especially out of like the Sakos and Tikkas, like they shoot incredibly well. So, um, there's no need to like test a rifle to like before we send it out for like review. Like we just send them a rifle. Like there's no, like if someone's saying, hey, we're gonna like test hunting rifles, you know, um, and we're gonna do a test across the board. I'm pretty certain that a lot of those other companies are going to like hand pick one, be like, oh, we know this one shoots really well,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
you
I
might,
see what you're.
yeah,
Yeah, so you just know that they're all consistently good. So just stick one in.
yeah,
Just send it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
they're going to shoot
It's
well.
gonna
So
work.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So and that's I'd say that's pretty. I mean, the amount of guns that we have people calling for like accuracy issues are. I mean, it's. I mean, I don't want to say zero, but it's about as
Yeah,
close
sure.
to zero. It's pretty crazy. So
Yep.
yeah,
No, that makes sense, and I appreciate you adding that kind of explanation to that component of it, because in my mind it in a way it separates the durability usefulness of the action versus like a lot of the accuracy just comes from the barrel. So I get that. Jared, you just mentioned something to me offline. I wanted to pick it up in the recording and add it to the podcast because this is super interesting. And you described it as a differentiation between the Sako, but go ahead and just start with the the overall of what we're talking about so everybody understands and get into the differences.
Yeah, so we were talking about lock time, and that's one thing that like the Sako 90 does. I think better. I mean, I think it's the fastest bolt action rifle on the market, but so it has a lock time of like I think it's 1.3 milliseconds. So basically, like as and that's the time between you pull the trigger and all the mechanisms, right? Like your cocking, your sear to drop and all that, and your firing pin to hit the primer. That you want to get that as short as possible. And the best like equivalent is like brace height on a bow, where it's like longer brace heights are just more forgiving. So yeah, like a lot of the older bolt action rifles that you'll see are like more in like the 3 second or 3 millisecond lock time. That's pretty common. Some of like the old Milsurp ones are like in like the 6 and 7s. So that's essentially just more time for you to move like while your shot is breaking and for you to throw off the shot. So yeah, the
So
Sako,
we're limiting how much we can screw up a
yeah.
a perfect system. Okay, I got you. So in this, you'll actually see this comes out in, I assume, perceived accuracy of rifles.
Yeah, like accuracy and just kind of forgiveness too. Necessarily, maybe is a good way to put it too. Where it's like in more, it's you can maintain that accuracy under worse circumstances. Might be a good way to put it. Just if things aren't absolutely perfect, your whatever your rest or whatever.
Sure.
So yeah, that's a way to put it. But yeah, it's actually something pretty cool. And let me see here.
No, it's a super. I totally get it conceptually. It's not. I mean, there's probably a bunch of people listening to this that are more familiar with it than I am. So that's why I wanted to hit record because like, all right, this actually makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just took the bolt sleeve apart that quickly. So your firing pin, instead of the spring wrapping on the outside and being like the full length, it's basically a short, very stiff spring contained in the back. So there's not a lot of superfluous movement, and you can have like a stiffer spring rate, basically. So that's kind of how that works. But it's a really neat design, and also too on the bolt sleeve, which I love. You have a bolt lock, which is what you'll see on like older guns, like a lot of the military surplus stuff. Basically, so if your bolt is open, you can't rotate this and like cause a lockup. So most modern guns just kind of delete that because they don't care as much about. I guess you chalk it up to like reliability.
I
But
got you.
yeah, yeah, kind of a cool design. Keeps the yeah, just yeah, really fast lock time, and it's just kind of the nature of how they designed it there.
Yeah, I love it, dude. It's an I like. Why do they call it lock time? Seems counterintuitive to me. It's like
I I think it came from like flintlocks and all that,
okay.
where like it was like the amount of time. I think they'd
The
call that like the
lag. It's like
lock,
the
and
lag between the hammer dropping and the round going off. I got you. No,
yeah.
super interesting. Sweet. I appreciate all your time, Jared. One last question, man. What's your bucket list hunt?
Oh man, I would love to hunt Alaska. So
Okay.
yeah, I think that'd be super fun. But I actually I lived in Wyoming for 5 years, and I did a lot of I never got an elk, so
Oh,
I need
okay.
to fix that. So that's something that like needs to happen. So and that'll happen one of these years. But yeah, I saw a bunch of elk, almost was there a bunch of times, but I never was able to seal the deal on that one.
So
That's
that's a need, and then the
yeah,
Alaska is a want. I get
yeah,
that.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
awesome,
So,
awesome, man. Well, Jared, thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it.
yep. Thanks for having me on.
If you enjoyed this content, do me a huge favor. Subscribe on whatever platform you consume it on. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever works for you guys. Everything else is on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. Go there and it's going to be very apparent to you that I work my ass off just to not have a real job. All the hunts I guide, all the seminars I put on, all the unique experiences I offer, and the membership site, all the details are there.